Blood painted the Texas horizon red as Eli Kinsman's bullet tore through the raider's chest. The year was 1872, and the borderlands between Texas and Comanche territory ran slick with the blood of both sides. Through the gunsmoke, Eli spotted her, a young Comanche woman bound at the wrists, her dark eyes reflecting both terror and defiance as she was dragged behind the leader of the raiding party like a prize stallion. "That ain't right, Caldwell," Eli called out, his voice carrying across the dusty yard of Thompson's trading post where several men from town had gathered to admire their spoils from the recent raid on a Comanche camp. "She's a person, not property." Caldwell Tucker, a broad-shouldered man with a reputation for cruelty that extended beyond his treatment of Indians, spat a stream of tobacco juice onto the dirt. "She's Comanche, Kinsman. They took 3 of our women last month. Consider this fair payment." Eli's hand rested on his Colt revolver. At 26, he wasn't the oldest or most seasoned cowhand at the White Spur Ranch, but he'd seen enough of humanity's darkness to recognize it plainly. There ain't nothing fair about kidnapping. The woman, barely more than 20 by Eli's estimation, stood with her chin high despite the rope burns on her wrists and the dirt streaking her face. Her traditional buckskin dress was torn at the shoulder, and dried blood matted a portion of her long black hair. But it was her eyes that struck Eli most intelligent, calculating, waiting for an opportunity. "You going soft on Indians now, Kinsman?" Jeb Watts stepped forward, a gleam in his eye that Eli recognized all too well. "Maybe you'd rather be riding with them?" "I'd rather be riding with decent men." Eli's voice was steady, but his heart hammered in his chest. Taking a stand against the entire town wasn't what he'd planned when he'd ridden in for supplies. The Comanche woman's gaze locked with his, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition perhaps, or an understanding. Eli had grown up alongside the Tonkawa tribe before their forced removal, had learned their language and customs from his father, who believed in fair dealings with all people regardless of origin. But that upbringing had made him an outsider in places like Ravens Creek, Texas, where Indian hating was as common as dust storms. "This here's Comanche property now." Caldwell yanked the rope, causing the woman to stumble forward. "One on fair raid, same as they do to us. Sheriff says it's legal." "Sheriff's wrong," Eli replied, stepping closer. "And so are you." The gathered men grew quiet. Challenging Caldwell Tucker was tantamount to suicide in Ravens Creek. He owned the largest cattle operation in the county and had the town council and sheriff in his pocket. "What you aiming to do about it, cowboy?" Caldwell's hand moved to his gun. Eli knew he had seconds to make a decision that would likely change the course of his life forever. "I'm buying her freedom." A ripple of surprised murmurs spread through the crowd. Caldwell's laugh was like the crack of a bullwhip. "She ain't for sale." Eli reached into his pocket and withdrew a small leather pouch, the contents representing 3 years of savings. $200 in gold. That's more than fair for a prisoner's release. The Comanche woman's expression shifted, subtly surprise, then something unreadable. Caldwell eyed the pouch. It was a significant sum, enough to hire 3 cowboys for a season. "You'd waste good money on a savage?" "I'd waste good money preventing a man from becoming something worse than what he claims to hate." Eli tossed the pouch at Caldwell's feet. "Take it. Consider it payment for your pride." For a long moment, the only sound was the wind whistling through the eaves of the trading post. Then Caldwell's greed won out. He scooped up the pouch, weighed it in his palm, and nodded. "She's yours then. But remember this, Kinsman, you just bought yourself a whole heap of trouble." Eli stepped forward and gently took the rope from Caldwell's hand. "What's your name?" he asked the woman softly. She straightened her shoulders, eyes burning with pride despite her circumstances. "Ehawee," she answered in accented but clear English. "It means laughing maiden, though I find little to laugh about among your people." "Can't blame you there," Eli acknowledged, untying her bonds with steady hands. "I'm Eli Kinsman." "Why did you do this, Eli Kinsman?" she asked, rubbing her raw wrists. "Because it was right." He glanced at the hostile faces surrounding them. "And we need to leave. Now." As they mounted his horse Ehawee behind him, her reluctant arms eventually circling his waist for balance, Eli heard Caldwell's parting words. "You're dead in this town, Kinsman. You and your Indian whore both." Eli spurred his horse forward, knowing that the price of his moral stand would be high. But as they rode away from Raven's Creek, the woman's arms tight around his waist, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. What he didn't know then was that Ehawee wasn't merely a captive. She was the daughter of Chief Gray Wolf, one of the most powerful Comanche war leaders on the frontier. And in saving her, Eli Kinsman had just positioned himself between two worlds preparing for war. They rode hard until nightfall, putting as much distance between themselves and Raven's Creek as possible. Eli guided his horse, a sturdy palomino named Sundown, off the main trail and into a sheltered ravine where a small creek provided fresh water. Only when he was certain they weren't followed did he finally dismount and help Ehawee down. "You need water," he said, noting the cracked dryness of her lips. She accepted his canteen with dignity, but eyed him warily as she drank. "Where are you taking me?" Eli hadn't thought that far ahead. "I reckon that depends on where you want to go. Your people, are they far?" 3 days' ride to the northwest, she replied after a pause, clearly deliberating how much to trust him. "Near the bend of the Red River." Eli nodded, pouring water into his hat for Sundown to drink. "I'll get you there." "Why would you do this?" Skepticism edged her voice. "White men do not help Comanche without wanting something in return." "I'm not most white men," Eli replied, gathering wood for a small fire. "My father traded fairly with the Tonkawa before they were forced out. Taught me that people are just people, no matter their skin." "Your father sounds unusual," Ehawee commented. "He was." Grief flickered across Eli's features. "Raiders killed him and my mother when I was 16. Some said it was Comanche. Others said white men disguised as Indians. I never learned the truth." Ehawee studied him in the growing firelight. "Yet you do not hate my people." "Hate's a heavy burden to carry," Eli replied, striking a match against a rock. "And it rarely falls on those who deserve it." As the small fire caught and grew, Ehawee moved closer to its warmth. The spring nights in North Texas could still carry a bite. Eli noticed her shiver and removed his coat, offering it wordlessly. She hesitated before accepting. "Your people will hunt you for helping me." "Probably." Eli's tone was matter-of-fact as he unwrapped a small bundle of jerky and hardtack. "But they weren't really my people. Not in the ways that matter." Ehawee accepted the food he offered. "You have no family?" "None living." Eli poked at the fire with a stick. "Been working cattle ranches since I was 17. White Spur's been home for the past 2 years, but..." He shrugged. "Guess I'm between jobs now." They ate in silence for a while. Eli found himself studying her when she wasn't looking, the proud line of her jaw, the intelligence in her eyes, the intricate beadwork on the undamaged portions of her dress. "How did you come to speak English so well?" he finally asked. A shadow passed over Ehawee's face. "When I was 12, missionaries came to our winter camp. They wished to educate Comanche children. My father allowed me to learn their language so I might understand our enemies better." She met his gaze directly. "Your government men speak many lies and treaties. It is useful to understand what they truly say." Eli nodded. "Can't argue with that." "Those men who took me," Ehawee continued, her voice growing hard. "They killed 4 of our men who were hunting. They waited until the warriors were gone, then attacked our camp." Her hands clenched into fists. "They took only me. The others, they killed women, children, elders." Eli's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry. Sorry does not bring back the dead." She stared into the fire, the flames reflecting in her dark eyes. "My father will seek vengeance when he learns what happened." "Can't blame him," Eli said quietly. "But more killing won't end this cycle." Ehawee looked at him sharply. "Would you not seek vengeance if it was your family?" The question struck deep, touching on wounds Eli had long tried to bury. "I did for a time. Tracked riders for months after my parents were killed. Never found them." He poked at the fire again. "All I got for my trouble was an emptiness that whiskey couldn't fill." The night deepened around them, stars appearing like scattered silver against the vast Texas sky. In the distance, a coyote called, its lonesome howl echoing through the ravine. "You should sleep," Eli finally said. "I'll keep watch." Ehawee regarded him with uncertainty. "You will not try to." She didn't finish the sentence. "No." Eli's voice was firm. "You have my word." "The word of a white man," she said, but there was less bitterness in her tone than before. "The word of Eli Kinsman," he corrected. "Judge me by my actions, not my skin." For the first time, something close to respect flickered in her eyes. She nodded once, then wrapped his coat tighter around herself and lay down near the fire, though Eli noticed she positioned herself so she could see both him and the horses. As she drifted into sleep, Eli kept his vigil, rifle across his knees. He knew that by morning, Caldwell would likely have a search party formed. $200 might have bought Ehawee's freedom in the moment, but a man like Caldwell wouldn't let such a challenge to his authority stand. What worried Eli more was what would happen when they reached Ehawee's people. He doubted the Comanche would welcome a white man riding into their camp, especially after what had been done to their women and children. But that was a problem for 3 days from now. Tonight, his concern was getting Ehawee safely through until morning. As he watched her sleeping form, Eli wondered at the strange turn his life had taken in the span of a single day. He'd ridden into Ravens Creek, a respected cowhand with prospects for advancement at the White Spur. Now he was an outcast, his savings gone, riding with a Comanche woman toward a future that promised nothing but danger. Yet somehow, he felt more at peace with himself than he had in years. The morning came with a faint glow over the eastern horizon and dew-dampened grass. Eli had allowed himself only brief moments of sleep through the night, always keeping one ear alert for approaching riders. Now he gently woke Ehawee, who transitioned from sleep to full alertness in an instant. "We should move," he said, already packing their meager supplies. "Caldwell's men will be searching by now." Ehawee nodded, handing back his coat. "There is a place 2 hours north where the river narrows. If we cross there, we will be harder to track." Eli raised an eyebrow. "You know this country well." "The Comanche know all of this land," she replied with quiet pride. "It has been ours for generations, though your people try to claim it with papers and fences." They mounted up, Ehawee again sitting behind Eli, though today she seemed less reluctant to hold on to him as Sundown navigated the uneven terrain. As they rode, Eli found himself increasingly aware of her presence, the warmth of her against his back, the faint scent of sage that seemed to cling to her hair despite days in captivity. "Your horse is strong," she commented as they rode. "A good choice for this country." "Raised him from a colt," Eli replied, patting Sundown's neck. "He's gotten me out of more than a few tight spots." "What will you do after you return me to my people?" Ehawee asked after a long silence. Eli hadn't allowed himself to think that far ahead. "Haven't decided. Can't go back to Ravens Creek, that's certain. Might head to New Mexico territory or up to Colorado. Plenty of ranches need experienced hands." "My people would not welcome you," she said, and Eli thought he detected a note of regret in her voice. "Not after what those men did." "I know." The trail narrowed as they approached the river Ehawee had mentioned. "I don't expect them to." They reached the crossing by mid-morning. The river was swift but shallow enough for Sundown to ford without difficulty. On the opposite bank, Eli let Ehawee guide them into harder terrain, rocky ground that would hold fewer tracks. They continued northwest, keeping a vigilant watch for pursuers. Around noon, they paused in the shade of a limestone outcropping to rest Sundown and share their dwindling supplies. "You are skilled at evading pursuit," Ehawee observed as Eli scanned their back trail through a brass spyglass. "Spent some time as a scout for the army," he admitted, "before I learned what that really meant." Her expression hardened. "You helped soldiers find our people." "I did." Eli didn't try to excuse it. "For about 6 months, until I saw what happened at Washita River. I walked away after that." Washita was where Custer had attacked Black Kettle's peaceful band in 1868, killing women and children who had been promised protection. It was a massacre that haunted many who witnessed it. "Yet you continued to live among those who committed such acts," Ehawee challenged. "Where else would I go?" Eli asked quietly. "This country's changing, Ehawee. The old ways, yours and mine both, are disappearing. I'm just trying to find my place in whatever's left." She studied him thoughtfully. "You are a strange man, Eli Kinsman." "Been told that before," he replied with a slight smile. Their moment of rest was interrupted by the distant sound of hoofbeats. Eli's hand went immediately to his rifle as he peered over the rocks. At least 6 riders were approaching from the southeast, following their trail, despite their precautions. "Caldwell's men," he muttered. "We need to move. Now." They mounted quickly, Ehawee clinging tightly to Eli as Sundown galloped across the scrubland. But a single horse carrying 2 riders couldn't outpace 6 fresh mounts for long. After 20 minutes of hard riding, the pursuit had closed half the distance. "They're gaining," Ehawee said, glancing back over her shoulder. Eli's mind raced through options, none of them good. Then he spotted a narrow canyon to their north, a place where one man with a rifle might hold off several attackers. "Hold on," he instructed, veering Sundown toward the canyon entrance. They thundered between the high rock walls, following the dry creek bed deeper into the shadowed passage until they reached a point where the canyon narrowed considerably. "This is where we make our stand," Eli said, helping Ehawee dismount before tying Sundown to a juniper tree around a bend in the canyon wall. "Get behind those rocks. If this goes badly, follow the canyon north. It should lead toward your territory." "You would fight your own people for me?" Ehawee asked, disbelief evident in her voice. "They stopped being my people when they murdered innocents," Eli replied, checking his Winchester. "Besides, I gave my word to see you home." Ehawee hesitated, then reached for the knife at her belt, a small blade that her captors had overlooked. "I will not hide while you fight alone." Before Eli could argue, the riders appeared at the canyon entrance, slowing their mounts as they spotted the defensive position. Caldwell was in the lead, his face contorted with fury even at this distance. "Kinsman," he shouted, his voice echoing between the canyon walls. "Return my property, and maybe we'll let you live." "She's not property, Caldwell," Eli called back, rifle braced against a boulder. "Turn back now. I don't want to kill any of you." Caldwell conferred briefly with his men before splitting them into two groups. Three dismounted and sought cover among rocks at the canyon entrance, while Caldwell and the remaining two prepared to charge forward. "Last chance, Kinsman," Caldwell warned, "or we're coming in to take her." Eli's finger tensed on the trigger. "You're making a mistake." The three riders spurred their horses forward suddenly, firing as they came. Eli's first shot caught the lead rider, knocked Caldwell in the chest, toppling him from his saddle. His second shot went wide as he ducked behind the boulder to avoid the barrage of return fire. When he rose again to aim, Caldwell and his remaining companion had dismounted and taken cover behind their fallen horses. The three men at the canyon entrance were providing covering fire, forcing Eli to keep his head down. A bullet chipped stone inches from his face, sending fragments cutting across his cheek. Another struck the boulder with a metallic whine. They were pinned down, and Eli knew it was only a matter of time before Caldwell's men maneuvered to flank them. "We need to retreat deeper into the canyon," he told Ehawee, who had pressed herself against the rock wall beside him. She shook her head. "They will just follow. We must stop them here." Before Eli could respond, Ehawee darted from cover toward a higher position on the canyon wall. Bullets kicked up dust around her feet, but she moved with remarkable speed and agility, reaching a narrow ledge 15 feet above the canyon floor. "Ehawee," Eli shouted, providing covering fire to draw attention away from her. From her elevated position, she had a clear view of the men at the canyon entrance. With practiced precision, she threw her knife, striking one of the men in the shoulder. His scream echoed through the canyon as he dropped his weapon. Eli seized the moment of confusion to take careful aim at Caldwell, who had exposed himself briefly. His shot caught the rancher in the leg, sending him tumbling behind his dead horse with a howl of pain. "Fall back," one of the remaining men shouted. "This ain't worth dying for." "Cowards," Caldwell bellowed. $500 to the man who brings me that Indian bitch's scalp." The promise of money stiffened their resolve. Two men began working their way forward using the scattered boulders as cover, while the others maintained suppressive fire. Eli had counted 15 shots fired from his Winchester. With only 5 rounds remaining, their situation was growing desperate. He glanced up at Ehawee, who had pressed herself flat against the ledge as bullets ricocheted off the canyon walls around her. Suddenly, the canyon erupted with the thunder of multiple rifles, but the fire wasn't directed at Eli and Ehawee. From the northern end of the canyon, at least a dozen mounted warriors appeared, their rifles and bows dealing death to Caldwell's surprised men. The battle was over in less than a minute. 4 of Caldwell's men lay dead or dying, while one had fled back toward Raven's Creek. Caldwell himself was propped against his dead horse, clutching his bleeding leg, his face ashen with fear as the Comanche warriors surrounded him. Ehawee called out in her native language, and the warriors looked up in surprise. One man older than the others, with streaks of gray in his long braids and an imposing presence, even from a distance, spurred his paint horse forward. "Father!" Ehawee cried, scrambling down from her perch to meet the approaching rider. Eli lowered his rifle slowly, understanding dawning. This was Chief Gray Wolf himself, and they had just ridden straight into a Comanche war party. Gray Wolf dismounted and embraced his daughter, speaking rapidly in their shared language. Ehawee responded, gesturing occasionally toward Eli. The chief's weathered face remained impassive as he listened, but his dark eyes never left Eli's face. Finally, Gray Wolf approached, his hand resting on the knife at his belt. "My daughter says you freed her from these men," he said in accented but clear English. "That you gave money and risked your life for her." "Yes," Eli replied simply, knowing his fate rested on the next few moments. Gray Wolf studied him. "Why would a white man do this?" "Because it was right," Eli answered, the same words he'd given Ehawee. "No one deserves to be treated as property." The chief's gaze was penetrating. "You were a scout for the Bluecoats." It wasn't a question, and Eli didn't bother denying it. "I was. Then I saw what they did to Black Kettle's people. I left that life behind." Gray Wolf nodded slowly. "Many white men speak with forked tongues, but my daughter believes you speak truth." He gestured toward Caldwell, who was being dragged forward by two warriors. "What should be done with this one?" Eli looked at Caldwell, the man who had kidnapped Ehawee, who had likely ordered the murder of women and children, who had pursued them with lethal intent. Part of him wanted to say that justice demanded Caldwell's death, but he remembered his words to Ehawee about the cycle of vengeance. "He has committed crimes against your people," Eli said carefully. "That's for you to judge. But killing him will only bring more white men seeking revenge." Gray Wolf considered this. "You have wisdom for one so young." He turned to Caldwell, who was trembling visibly now. "You will return to your people with a message. The Comanche do not want war, but we will protect our own. Tell your chiefs that the next raid on our camps will bring death to all who participate." He said something to his warriors in Comanche, and they roughly bound Caldwell's wound before placing him on one of their spare horses. "If you return to our lands," Gray Wolf told the rancher, "you will not leave alive." As Caldwell was led away, Gray Wolf turned back to Eli. "You cannot return to your people now." "No," Eli agreed, glancing at Ehawee, who had remained silent during this exchange. "I can't." "Then you will come with us," the chief decided. "We will decide your fate when we reach our camp." Eli nodded, understanding that while he might have earned a temporary reprieve, his future remained uncertain. As he retrieved Sundown and prepared to ride with the Comanche party, Ehawee approached him. "Thank you," she said softly, so only he could hear. "You have honored your word." "It's not over yet," Eli replied, noting the wary looks from the other warriors. Ehawee's eyes held a certainty that Eli wished he could share. "My father is a fair man. He will see your true heart." As they rode north together, Eli couldn't help but wonder if a white man's heart, even one who had tried to do right, would find any place among the Comanche people, or if he had merely exchanged one kind of exile for another. The Comanche camp sprawled across a protected valley near the Red River, its dozens of teepees arranged in a rough circle according to family groups. As Gray Wolf's party approached, people emerged from their dwellings to greet the returning warriors, but the cheers died quickly when they spotted Eli riding among them. Children were hurried back into teepees. Men reached for weapons. Women watched with suspicious eyes. Eli felt the weight of their collective gaze, heavy with generations of betrayal and broken promises from men who looked like him. Gray Wolf raised his hand, speaking in a commanding tone that silenced the murmurs. He explained Eli's presence in their language, occasionally gesturing toward Ehawee, who rode beside her father with her head held high. Eli remained silent, knowing that speaking would only heighten suspicions. Instead, he sat straight on Sundown, meeting the stares with respectful acknowledgement rather than challenge or fear. An elderly man with deep lines etched into his face stepped forward, speaking rapidly and pointing at Eli with evident disapproval. Others joined in, some nodding agreement, others looking to Gray Wolf for guidance. Finally, Gray Wolf silenced them with another gesture. "You will stay in my lodge tonight," he informed Eli. "Tomorrow, the council will decide what to do with you." Eli dismounted, leading Sundown by the reins. "Thank you for your hospitality." A young warrior approached to take charge of Sundown, his expression hostile. Eli hesitated, reluctant to surrender his faithful horse. He will be cared for, Ehawee assured him, seeing his concern. No harm will come to him. Eli nodded and relinquished the reins, though doing so left him feeling even more vulnerable. Without his horse, escape would be impossible should things turn against him. Gray Wolf's lodge stood near the center of the camp, larger than most, befitting his status as chief. Inside, several women were preparing the evening meal. They paused in their work when Eli entered, exchanging worried glances. "This is the man who saved my daughter," Gray Wolf announced. One of the women, older than Ehawee, with similar features that marked her as a relative, approached cautiously. "I am Morning Bird, Gray Wolf's wife," she said in halting English. "Ehawee has told me what you did. We are grateful." The simple acknowledgement eased some of the tension in Eli's shoulders. "I'm honored to meet you." Gray Wolf indicated where Eli should sit, not in the place of honor near the fire, but not in disgrace by the entrance either. A position of neutrality, awaiting judgment. As evening fell, more people came to Gray Wolf's lodge, other leaders and elders, all curious to see the white man who had rescued one of their own. Eli answered their questions honestly, speaking of his upbringing, his brief time as a scout, and why he had intervened to free Ehawee. "You gave all your money for her," one elder stated, clearly finding this difficult to believe. "Why?" "Because her freedom was worth more than gold," Eli replied. It was a simple truth, but one that seemed to affect several of the gathered Comanche. They exchanged glances, speaking among themselves in low tones. Throughout the evening, Eli noticed Ehawee watching him. She had changed into a clean dress of soft buckskin adorned with intricate beadwork, her hair freshly braided with thin strips of leather woven through the plaits. Even amidst her own people, she stood apart, proud, intelligent, and increasingly intriguing to him. When the meal was served, Eli accepted the offered bowl of stew with appropriate gratitude. The food was different from what he was accustomed to, heavier on wild roots and berries, but after days of jerky and hardtack, it tasted like a feast. As the night deepened, the visitors gradually departed. Gray Wolf indicated a spot along the lodge wall where Eli could sleep, providing buffalo robes for bedding. "Rest," the chief said. "Tomorrow many voices will speak of your fate." After Gray Wolf retired to his sleeping area with Morning Bird, Eli found himself alone with Ehawee near the dying fire. She sat cross-legged across from him, her face illuminated by the fading embers. "Are you afraid?" she asked quietly. Eli considered the question honestly. "Wary," he finally answered. "Not afraid. Some will call for your death," she warned. "They do not trust any white man, no matter what he has done." "Can't blame them for that," Eli admitted. "White men haven't given your people much reason for trust." Ehawee studied him thoughtfully. "Why do you not defend your people? Most white men speak of bringing civilization, of their right to our lands." "Those aren't my beliefs," Eli replied. "My father taught me that the only land a man has right to is what he can care for with his own hands. Everything else is borrowed." A small smile touched Ehawee's lips. "Your father was indeed unusual. He would have liked you," Eli said without thinking. The words hung between them in the firelit silence. Ehawee's gaze softened. "Sleep now, Eli Kinsman. I will speak for you tomorrow." As she moved to her own sleeping area, Eli settled onto the buffalo robes, aware that tomorrow might bring his death. Yet somehow, knowing Ehawee would stand as his advocate made that possibility easier to face. The council gathered at midday in a large clearing at the center of the camp. Eli was brought before nearly 40 Comanche men seated in a semicircle, with Gray Wolf at the center. Women and children watched from a respectful distance, their faces revealing a mixture of curiosity and distrust. Eli stood straight, his hat in his hands, as Gray Wolf explained the purpose of the gathering. Though he couldn't understand the Comanche language, the tone and gestures made the proceedings clear enough. His actions were being recounted, his character evaluated, his fate determined. Several men spoke in turn, some gesturing angrily toward Eli, others seeming more measured in their assessment. Ehawee stepped forward at one point, speaking passionately while occasionally indicating Eli. Her words seemed to sway some, though others remained unmoved. Finally, Gray Wolf raised his hand for silence. "Eli Kinsman," he said in English. Do you wish to speak to this council? Eli had not expected to be given a voice in these proceedings. He stepped forward, conscious of dozens of eyes upon him. I don't ask for special treatment, he began. I acted as any decent man should. If that deserves punishment among your people, I'll accept it. He paused, looking directly at Grey Wolf. But I would ask this. Judge me by what I've done, not by what others who share my skin have done. Grey Wolf translated his words, which prompted renewed discussion among the council. An older man with a face deeply lined by sun and hardship rose to speak. When he finished, Grey Wolf nodded gravely. The council has decided, the chief announced. You saved the daughter of a chief at great personal cost. For this, your life is spared. Eli felt relief wash through him, but Grey Wolf continued. However, you cannot stay among us as a free man. Some believe you may be a spy for the Bluecoats. What then? Eli asked, already suspecting the answer. You will remain as my prisoner, Grey Wolf stated. You will work, and you will be watched. If you prove trustworthy over time, your status may change. It was more than Eli had dared hope for, given the circumstances. I accept your judgment, he said with a respectful nod. Father, Ehawee interjected, addressing Grey Wolf in English so Eli could understand. He is skilled with horses and cattle. Let him work with the herd. There he can be useful without being a threat. Grey Wolf considered this. It will be so. Rising Bear will guard him. He indicated a muscular young warrior who had been among those most visibly opposed to Eli's presence. The council dispersed, and Eli found himself being led to the edge of camp, where the Comanche kept their sizable herd of horses. Rising Bear said nothing, merely pointing to a damaged section of the brush corral that needed repair. As Eli set to work under the warrior's watchful gaze, Ehawee appeared with water and a small bundle of food. It is not much, she said, handing them to Eli. But it will help until evening meal. Thank you, Eli replied, taking a long drink. Your father is fair. I expected worse. He respects what you did, Ehawee explained. But he must also consider the feelings of all our people. She glanced at Rising Bear, who was maintaining a deliberately stoic expression despite obviously listening to every word. Some lost family to white raiders. Their anger is understandable. Eli nodded. I'll earn their trust if I can. Why does that matter to you? Ehawee asked, genuinely curious. Most white men would be planning escape. Eli continued working as he considered her question. Where would I go? I can't return to white settlements nearby. And, he hesitated, then finished honestly. I've never felt I belonged among my own people. Maybe I was always meant to be between worlds. Something in his words seemed to resonate with Ehawee. She studied him with new interest before Rising Bear called out something in Comanche. She replied briefly, then turned back to Eli. I must go. The women are preparing a ceremony for those lost in the raid. Her expression darkened with grief. Including my cousin and her infant son. Eli's hands stilled on the corral. I'm sorry, Ehawee. She nodded once, then departed, leaving Eli to his work and Rising Bear to his watchful silence. The days that followed established a routine. Eli worked from sunrise to sunset, primarily with the horses, but also hunting with a group of warriors when his skill with firearms proved useful. Rising Bear remained his constant shadow, though the warrior's hostile silence gradually gave way to occasional comments and questions about white settlements and customs. Ehawee visited often, ostensibly to check on his welfare, as was proper for one whose life he had saved. But Eli sensed her visits had more purpose than mere obligation. She was curious about him, just as he found himself increasingly drawn to her. 2 weeks after his arrival, Eli was repairing a broken bridle when Ehawee approached with a troubled expression. Rising Bear, who had begun allowing Eli more freedom within the camp, tactfully moved a short distance away. What's wrong? Eli asked, setting aside his work. Scouts have reported soldiers moving in our direction, Ehawee said, her voice low. Not many, perhaps 20, but they are asking questions about a white man among the Comanche. Eli's stomach tightened. Caldwell must have gone to the authorities. Claimed I was kidnapped, most likely. The council believes you may have led them to us, Ehawee admitted. Some want to kill you before the soldiers arrive. I've been here the entire time, Eli protested. How could I have led them anywhere? I know this, Ehawee said, placing her hand briefly on his arm the first time she had touched him since their ride together. My father knows this too. But fear makes men think darkly. Eli considered their options. If I leave, ride out to meet these soldiers, I could explain what really happened. They would not believe you over a wealthy white rancher, Ehawee pointed out. And our people would think you had fled to rejoin your kind. She was right. Either course led to disaster for him, for Ehawee's people, or both. There must be another way, Eli muttered, more to himself than to her. Ehawee's expression shifted suddenly, determination replacing worry. There is one way, but you may not like it. I'm listening. If you were Comanche, truly one of us, the soldiers would have no claim on you, she explained. They could not demand your return. Eli frowned. I'm not following. I can't become Comanche overnight. But you can through marriage, Ehawee stated, meeting his eyes directly. If you married a Comanche woman, you would become part of our tribe by our laws. The implication stunned Eli. You mean, it would be a marriage of necessity, Ehawee clarified quickly, to protect both you and our people. The soldiers respect marriage bonds, even with natives, more than they respect plain kidnapping. Eli studied her face, trying to discern her true feelings behind this practical proposal. And who would agree to such an arrangement? Ehawee straightened her shoulders. I would. You saved my life at great cost. This would balance that debt. A marriage shouldn't be about debt, Eli said quietly. Perhaps not for your people, she countered. But for us, marriages have many purposes: alliance, strength, protection. Personal feelings are secondary to the good of the tribe. Eli found himself wondering what her personal feelings might be, but he pushed that thought aside. Would your father allow this? He will see the wisdom in it, Ehawee replied with confidence. It gives him a way to protect you without appearing weak before the council. The proposition was so unexpected that Eli needed time to process it. May I think about this? Something like disappointment flickered in Ehawee's eyes, quickly masked. Of course, but the soldiers may arrive within 2 days. We do not have much time. After she departed, Eli sat motionless, turning the proposal over in his mind. Marriage to Ehawee would certainly solve their immediate problem, but it would also bind him permanently to the Comanche people. He would never again belong fully to the white world. Yet as he considered this, Eli realized he had never truly belonged there anyway. His father's teachings had always set him apart, made him an outsider among those who viewed Indians as savages to be eliminated. And Ehawee, intelligent, proud, beautiful Ehawee, stirred feelings in him that went far beyond gratitude or admiration. That evening, as the camp prepared for sleep, Eli requested an audience with Gray Wolf. The chief received him in his lodge, pipe in hand, his expression revealing nothing. Ehawee has told me of her proposal, Gray Wolf said without preamble. You wish to speak of this? Eli nodded. With your permission, I would marry your daughter. Not just to protect myself from the soldiers, but because I have come to respect her greatly. Gray Wolf studied him through a cloud of pipe smoke. And what can you offer my daughter? You have no horses, no status among our people. I have my skills, my loyalty, and my word, Eli replied. I will provide for her and protect her with my life. The chief drew on his pipe thoughtfully. Among our people, a man must prove his worth before taking a wife, especially a chief's daughter. He must show courage, wisdom, and the ability to provide. Tell me how, Eli said simply. Gray Wolf's stern expression softened slightly. You showed courage when you faced those men to free my daughter. You showed wisdom in how you spoke to our council. He set down his pipe. As for providing, our hunting party leaves at dawn to seek buffalo. You will join them. If you return having taken a buffalo by your own hand, I will consent to this marriage. Eli understood the challenge. Buffalo hunting was dangerous under the best circumstances. For a white man untrained in Comanche hunting techniques, it could be deadly. I'll do it, he agreed. One more thing, Gray Wolf added. If you fail or if you run from this test, I will personally track you down. I won't run, Eli promised. As he left Gray Wolf's lodge, Eli found Ehawee waiting outside, her face questioning. He has set me a task, Eli explained. Buffalo hunting tomorrow. If I succeed, he will consent. Buffalo hunting is dangerous, she said, concern evident in her voice. Many young men die in their first hunt. Then I'll need to be careful. Eli replied with more confidence than he felt. Ehawee hesitated, then reached for something at her neck, a small leather pouch suspended on a sinew cord. "Take this," she said, removing it and placing it in his hand. "It contains my guardian spirit. It will protect you." The gesture moved Eli deeply. "I'll return it to you tomorrow," he promised. "See that you do," she replied, her voice suddenly husky with emotion. Before Eli could respond, she turned and walked quickly away, disappearing into the darkness between the lodges. Dawn found Eli riding with 15 Comanche hunters, including Rising Bear, who had been assigned to watch him during the hunt. They traveled several hours north, following the tracks of a buffalo herd until they spotted the massive beasts grazing on a distant plain. The lead hunter explained their strategy through gestures and broken English. The Comanche would drive the herd toward a narrow draw where individual hunters could isolate targets. Eli would be given his chance, but only one. If he missed or merely wounded his buffalo, he would have failed Gray Wolf's test. Riding Sundown, who had proven himself well-behaved around the Comanche horses, Eli positioned himself where directed. His Winchester was loaded, though he knew the Comanche traditionally hunted buffalo with bows or lances to demonstrate greater skill and courage. The hunters disappeared over a rise, and minutes later Eli heard their cries as they began driving the herd. The ground trembled beneath Sundown's hooves as hundreds of buffalo thundered toward the draw, dust rising in great clouds behind them. Eli steeled himself, remembering everything he knew about buffalo hunting from his time on the plains. The beasts were surprisingly fast, incredibly strong, and could sustain mortal wounds, yet continue charging for minutes before succumbing. As the first animals entered the draw, Eli urged Sundown forward. Rising Bear watched from a distance, his expression skeptical. The herd split around large boulders in the draw, creating the opportunity Eli had been waiting for. He singled out a mature bull, not the largest but one in its prime, and spurred Sundown alongside it. The buffalo snorted in alarm, turning its massive head toward this new threat. In traditional Comanche hunting, a warrior would ride close enough to thrust a lance behind the buffalo's front shoulder, piercing its heart. Eli had no lance, but he had learned from an old Tonkawa hunter that a precisely placed bullet could accomplish the same result. Drawing his rifle, Eli rode parallel to the charging bull, matching its pace. The animal was so close he could see its rolling eye, smell its musky scent. One misstep by Sundown would put them directly in the path of those deadly horns. Eli took aim, exhaled slowly, and squeezed the trigger. The bull stumbled, bellowed once, then crashed to the ground in a cloud of dust. Eli reined Sundown around sharply, narrowly avoiding a second buffalo that charged past. When the dust settled, the buffalo lay motionless, Eli's bullet having found its mark perfectly. One shot, one kill, a clean death that would honor both the animal and Gray Wolf's challenge. The other hunters approached, examining Eli's kill with expert eyes. Rising Bear dismounted, checked the wound, then looked at Eli with newfound respect. He spoke rapidly to the others, who nodded in agreement. "Good shot," Rising Bear said in English, the first direct words he had spoken to Eli. "Clean kill. Chief will approve." They butchered the buffalo on site, loading the meat onto pack horses for the return journey. Nothing was wasted: meat, hide, bones, organs, all would serve purposes within the camp. As they rode back, several hunters rode alongside Eli, asking through gestures and limited shared vocabulary about his hunting experiences. The barriers that had separated them began to dissolve, replaced by the universal bond of men who had faced danger together. By the time they reached camp in the late afternoon, word of Eli's successful hunt had preceded them. Gray Wolf waited at the edge of camp, his face impassive but his eyes assessing the load of meat and hide that represented Eli's accomplishment. Eli dismounted, approached the chief, and waited silently for his judgment. Gray Wolf nodded once. "You have passed the test," he announced. "The wedding will take place tomorrow, before the soldiers arrive." Relief and anticipation coursed through Eli. "Thank you," he said simply. As Gray Wolf walked away, Ehawee approached, her eyes immediately searching Eli's face. "You succeeded," she stated, seeing his expression. "I did," Eli confirmed, reaching into his shirt to withdraw her medicine pouch. "Your guardian spirit kept me safe." She accepted it, her fingers brushing his. I am glad. Ehawee, Eli said softly, conscious of others nearby, but needing to speak his mind. I want you to know this isn't just about escaping the soldiers for me. If we're to be married, even for practical reasons, I will honor you as a husband should. Her dark eyes studied his face intently. And I will honor you as a wife should, she replied. Then, more quietly, perhaps in time, necessity will become something more. Before Eli could respond, Morning Bird appeared to lead Ehawee away for wedding preparations. But the look Ehawee gave him over her shoulder carried a warmth that stayed with him throughout the evening. That night, as was Comanche custom, Eli was kept separate from Ehawee. He sat with the men around a council fire, receiving advice about married life that transcended cultural differences in its blunt practicality. Some teased him good-naturedly, while others offered sincere counsel about respecting Ehawee's strength of spirit while protecting her as a husband should. The wedding ceremony took place at noon the following day. The entire camp gathered to witness this unusual union, many still wary but gradually accepting Gray Wolf's decision. Eli had been provided with traditional Comanche clothing, buckskin leggings, and shirt adorned with modest beadwork, while Ehawee appeared in an elaborately decorated dress that had been her mother's. The ceremony itself was simpler than Eli had expected. Gray Wolf spoke of the duties of marriage, of how two became one family, one strength. Ehawee and Eli exchanged simple promises to care for one another, to bring honor to their shared lodge. Then they shared food from the same bowl and water from the same cup, symbolizing their union. No one mentioned that this marriage had been arranged to protect Eli from the approaching soldiers. In the eyes of the Comanche, once spoken, marriage vows were sacred regardless of their origin. As the ceremony concluded, Rising Bear approached with sundown, now adorned with painted symbols of protection. Wedding gift, he explained. I prepared him in our way. Eli was deeply touched by this gesture from a man who had once been his reluctant guard. Thank you, my friend. The celebration continued through the afternoon, with feasting, singing, and dancing. Eli did his best to participate appropriately, following Ehawee's subtle guidance when he was uncertain. She remained close by his side, her presence both comforting and exhilarating. As evening approached, the scouts' warning came. Soldiers were less than an hour from camp. Gray Wolf called for calm, instructing everyone to continue normal activities. We have nothing to hide, he declared. We will meet them with dignity. Ehawee and Eli stood together as the soldiers rode into view 18 men, led by a lieutenant, their blue uniforms stark against the natural landscape. The Comanche warriors positioned themselves strategically throughout the camp, ready but not overtly threatening. Lieutenant James Harker dismounted, approaching Gray Wolf with the wary respect of a man who knew he was outnumbered but confident in the authority he represented. Chief Gray Wolf, he began formally. I'm here on behalf of the United States Army to investigate reports of a white man being held captive in your camp. Gray Wolf's expression remained impassive. We hold no captives, Lieutenant. Harker's eyes scanned the gathered Comanche, stopping when he spotted Eli in his native clothing. That man there isn't he Eli Kinsman from Ravens Creek. Eli stepped forward, Ehawee at his side. I'm Eli Kinsman, Lieutenant. But I'm not a captive. Mr. Caldwell claims you were abducted after these Comanche raided his ranch, Harker stated. He's offering a substantial reward for your return. Caldwell's lying, Eli replied evenly. He and his men attacked a peaceful Comanche camp, killed women and children, and took this woman, he indicated Ehawee, as a trophy. I paid for her freedom and brought her back to her people. Harker frowned. That's not the story I heard. It's the truth, Eli insisted. And regardless, I'm here of my own free will. In fact, he took Ehawee's hand. We were married today. I'm now part of this band by their law and by my choice. The lieutenant looked genuinely surprised. Married? To a Comanche woman? He shook his head slightly. That complicates matters. There are no matters to complicate, Gray Wolf interjected. Eli Kinsman is now family. He stays with us. Lieutenant Harker removed his hat, wiping sweat from his brow. Chief, I have orders to investigate, not to start a conflict. If Kinsman says he's here willingly and has, married into your tribe, I have no authority to force his return. Relief washed through Eli, though he maintained a neutral expression. Tell Caldwell I'm where I belong now, and warn him that any further action against these people will have consequences." The lieutenant studied Eli for a long moment. "You understand that once you make this choice, there's no going back? White settlements won't welcome a man who's gone Indian." "I've never felt welcome in those settlements anyway," Eli replied honestly. After a brief exchange of formal courtesies with Gray Wolf, Lieutenant Harker and his men departed, riding south toward Fort Richardson. The entire camp seemed to exhale collectively as the soldiers disappeared from view. Gray Wolf approached Eli and Ehawee. "It is done," he said simply. "You are now truly one of us, Eli Kinsman." He placed his hand briefly on Eli's shoulder, a gesture of acceptance that meant more than words could express. As the celebration resumed with renewed energy, Eli turned to Ehawee. "Are you disappointed?" he asked quietly. "That our marriage began as a necessity?" Ehawee's eyes held a warmth that made his heart quicken. "The beginning of a journey does not determine its course," she replied. "Many arranged marriages become love matches over time." "And ours?" Eli asked, suddenly aware of how much her answer meant to him. Instead of speaking, Ehawee took his hand and led him away from the celebration toward the new lodge that had been prepared for them, a wedding gift from Gray Wolf. Inside, furs and blankets created a comfortable sleeping area, and a small fire cast dancing shadows on the lodge walls. When they were alone, Ehawee turned to face him. "Since the moment you stood against your own people to defend me, I have seen your heart, Eli Kinsman," she said softly. "It is a good heart, one that I could grow to love, if you would let me." Eli gently traced the contour of her cheek with his fingertips. "I think that process has already begun for me," he admitted. When their lips finally met, it was not the culmination of their journey, but its true beginning, a promise of understanding between two people from different worlds who had somehow found common ground. The months that followed transformed Eli from outsider to respected member of the community. He learned the Comanche language with Ehawee's patient teaching, mastered their hunting techniques, and contributed his knowledge of cattle and horse management to improve the tribe's herds. Summer gave way to autumn, and with the changing season came news that Gray Wolf had anticipated but hoped to avoid. The government was enforcing the treaty that confined all Comanche to the reservation in Indian Territory. Soldiers were moving against bands that refused to comply. "We cannot fight," Gray Wolf told the council, Eli now included among them. "We have too few warriors, too many women and children who would suffer." "The reservation is a prison," one elder objected. "Our people waste away there, with poor food and white man's diseases." Eli had heard similar stories from other tribes. The reservation system was designed to break native resistance, to transform free people into dependents. Yet resistance meant certain death. "There may be another way," Eli suggested tentatively. All eyes turned to him. Though accepted now, he rarely spoke at council meetings unless directly addressed. "The treaty allows for allotments of land to be claimed by individual families," he explained. "Land that becomes their legal property, protected by white man's law." Gray Wolf frowned. "We do not believe land can be owned like a horse or a knife." "I know," Eli acknowledged. "But believing in ownership and using their system to protect our people are different things." He outlined his proposal. Instead of moving to the main reservation, their band could claim adjacent allotments in a fertile valley Eli knew of near the Red River. They would technically be complying with the treaty while maintaining their community and much of their traditional way of life. "It would mean changes," Eli admitted. "Building permanent homes, some farming alongside hunting. But it would keep our families together on land that could sustain us." The council debated long into the night. Some rejected any compromise with the white government. Others saw the wisdom in Eli's suggestion. Eventually, Gray Wolf made his decision. They would follow Eli's plan. "We adapt to survive," the chief declared, "as we have always done." The transition was challenging. Government agents were suspicious of Eli's involvement, but couldn't deny the band's right to claim their allotments under the treaty. By winter, the Comanche had established their new community along a sheltered creek that provided water year-round. Eli and Ehawee built a home that bridged their cultures, a solid log cabin with a central fire pit, like a lodge, and windows positioned to catch the morning sun as Comanche dwellings traditionally did. They kept horses and began a small herd of cattle, combining Eli's ranching knowledge with traditional Comanche animal husbandry. Throughout these changes, their relationship deepened. What had begun as a marriage of necessity blossomed into a partnership of genuine love and respect. Ehawee's strength and wisdom guided Eli through the complexities of Comanche culture, while his knowledge of the changing world helped her people navigate the difficult transition. In the spring of 1873, their joy multiplied with the birth of their son, whom they named Thomas Gray Wolf Kinsman Thomas after Eli's father, Gray Wolf, to honor Ehawee's. The child embodied their union, features that reflected both lineages, eyes that held the wisdom of two peoples. Word of their unusual community spread. Other mixed couples, some native and white, others from different tribes, sought refuge in their settlement, drawn by the promise of a place where neither world had to be fully abandoned. Gray Wolf, showing the adaptability that had made him a great chief, welcomed these newcomers while maintaining Comanche traditions at the community's core. Not all challenges came from outside. Some Comanche, particularly younger warriors, chafed at the compromises their new life required. Others struggled with the transition to more settled ways. Eli and Ehawee worked tirelessly to preserve essential traditions while adapting others to their new reality. 5 years after Eli had first intervened to save Ehawee from Caldwell's men, their community had grown to nearly 200 people. Their cabin had expanded to accommodate not only Thomas, but also twin daughters born the previous winter. Gray Wolf, now in his 60s but still vital, took immense pride in his grandchildren, teaching them Comanche ways while encouraging Eli to share his knowledge as well. One autumn evening, as Eli and Ehawee sat watching the sunset from the porch of their home, a rider appeared on the road leading to their settlement. Eli stood, hand moving instinctively to the rifle kept nearby. Old habits died hard in these still uncertain times. As the rider drew closer, Eli recognized Lieutenant Harker, now captained by the insignia on his uniform. The years had added gray to his mustache, but hadn't diminished his military bearing. "Captain Harker," Eli greeted him, offering a hand which the officer shook firmly. "What brings you to our settlement?" "Passing through on patrol," Harker replied, accepting Ehawee's silent offer of water. "Thought I'd see for myself what I've been hearing about." He surveyed the collection of homes and gardens visible from their vantage point. "Quite an achievement, Kinsman. It's been a community effort," Eli said, gesturing for Harker to take a seat on the porch. Ehawee's father had the wisdom to see that adaptation wasn't surrender. Harker nodded thoughtfully. "Not many bands have managed the transition so successfully." He hesitated, then added, "I've been authorized to inform you that the government is considering your settlement as a model for future arrangements." Eli exchanged a glance with Ehawee. "We're not interested in becoming an experiment, Captain." "Not an experiment," Harker clarified. "A precedent. There are officials in Washington who recognize that the reservation system isn't working as intended. Your community offers an alternative approach." As they discussed the implications of this development, Thomas and the twins emerged from the cabin, curious about their visitor. Harker watched the children with evident interest as they moved easily between English and Comanche in their chatter. "Your children are the future," he commented. "Neither fully white nor fully Comanche, but something new." He looked at Eli. "Do you ever regret your choice, Kinsman? Turning your back on your own people?" Eli's arm slipped around Ehawee's waist. "I didn't turn my back on anyone, Captain. I just found where I truly belonged." After Harker's departure, as twilight deepened into night, Eli and Ehawee remained on the porch. Their children had been tucked into bed with stories from both their heritages, Comanche tales of the stars, and Eli's memories of his father's frontier wisdom. "Do you think he's right?" Ehawee asked, her head resting against Eli's shoulder. "That our children represent something new?" Eli considered this as he watched the first stars appear. "I think they represent something timeless," he finally replied. "The understanding that human hearts can bridge any divide if given the chance." Ehawee smiled, taking his hand in hers. "When you freed me that day in Ravens Creek, I could never have imagined this life." "Nor could I," Eli admitted. "But I wouldn't change a moment of our journey." As night settled fully over their home, Eli reflected on the strange path that had led him here. One act of conscience had altered the course of his life, leading him to a love and purpose he'd never imagined possible. In saving Ehawee, he had ultimately saved himself as well. Together, they had created something rare and precious, a place between worlds where neither had to surrender their identity to honor the other. Their children would walk a new path, carrying forward the best of both heritages in a changing America. The road ahead would hold challenges still. The westward expansion continued unabated, and government policies shifted with political winds. But Eli and Ehawee had built something that could withstand these pressures, a community founded on mutual respect, a family bonded by love that transcended cultural differences. In the years that followed, their settlement became known as Harmony Creek, a place where Comanche traditions remained vibrant while adapting to changing realities. Eli and Ehawee's children grew into leaders who understood both worlds and could navigate between them. Thomas eventually served as a representative to Washington, advocating for Native rights while building bridges with white authorities. The twins, Sarah and Elena, became educators who preserved Comanche language and culture while preparing young people for life in a transforming West. Gray Wolf lived to see his great-grandchildren, passing peacefully in the winter of 1887 with his family gathered around him. Before his death, he told Eli, "You came to us as a stranger, became my son through necessity, and proved yourself a true Comanche through your actions. The people will remember your name alongside mine." For Eli, no honor could have been greater. As he and Ehawee entered their later years, they watched their community flourish despite the hardships that continued to face Native peoples throughout America. Their home remained a gathering place, where stories were shared, traditions maintained, and future generations taught the importance of standing for what was right regardless of personal cost. On the 30th anniversary of the day Eli had first intervened to save Ehawee from captivity, their extended family gathered to celebrate. Looking around at the dozens of faces, some clearly Comanche, others showing mixed heritage, all part of the community they had built together, Eli felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Was it worth it? Ehawee asked quietly as they sat together, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and the larger family they had created through shared purpose. "Giving up your world for mine?" Eli smiled, taking her hand, the same hand he had untied from Caldwell's rope so many years before. "I didn't give up anything that mattered," he replied, "and I gained everything that did." In that moment, as sunset painted the Texas sky the same fiery red as the day they had first met, both knew with absolute certainty that some choices, however difficult, defined not just a life, but a legacy. Their love, born of courage and sustained through challenge, had created a bridge between worlds that would endure long after they were gone. And in the end, that was all either of them had ever truly wanted.